But people were really interested. Even my biophysical scientist colleagues were really interested because it wasn't something they had thought of before. And that was part of what I was hoping to show you in tracing that history was these ideas have been there, except that they haven't really bubbled up or caught on. And I think the fact that the Society for Conservation Biology just established their religion and conservation biology working group in 2008 shows that it's just getting going. So my colleagues over there thought, they just basically thought, that's interesting. There are probably not a lot of them who are religious, but the idea that religious beliefs might help them in a goal that we all shared in creating a more flourishing ecosystem was appealing. So I think they could see it from the pragmatic side that, oh, well, if that's what will bring people on board, great, let's talk about religion. And I don't think that's the only way to talk about it, just as let's use a religion. I think it's much more complicated than that, and that sort of elides a lot of spiritual aspects. But that's one way that people can understand it. Okay, this is a tool, and the world's religious traditions carry messages about how people should interact with the natural world, and if that will help us in our goal of conserving it, then great, let's talk about religion.
Was there any connection at all between your department and the Haas School of Business there?
No, or not for me. I think that there might be a few people who take courses over there. I didn't happen to. It's a possibility, but depending on an individual trajectory. Now I'm thinking that there are a couple of professors who work on supply chains, so they may have a connection. That just wasn't part of my experience, but there could be. Yeah.
Let's see. If it's possible, as I understand you, to look at ideas in religion and philosophy and see how they can be extended to encompass environmental concerns. Is there also, does this effort also apply to political and economic ideologies?
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly there has been an effort in ecological economics to develop methods of accounting that take into account externalized costs. So right now, anything that's dumped into the environment, pollution, whatever, is not counted in the cost of creating something, but there is a long-term cost to society of having those pollutants in the environment in terms of health, in terms of endangered ecosystems. So Richard Norgaard and Robert Repetto at Yale and others have been trying to develop methods of accounting that would take those currently externalized costs into account for more for fuller accounting of the effects on the ecosystems. And similarly, when you have a natural disaster, that actually benefits the GDP. So all this spending on, say, the oil spill or Katrina, GDP goes up because there's just more spending. But that's a drain on our economy. Those are not good expenses to be having. So people are trying to work to incorporate this. I think that ultimately the capitalist model doesn't really work because it's based on an ever-expanding economy. And on one planet, there are limits to how far the economy can expand. I referred briefly to the American frontier idea, which is similar, that Americans were always pushing across this continent until we got to here. Well, and then we went to Hawaii. But always looking for new land, new places to explore. And our economy is similar, looking for new places to colonize. And so we have, started exports, and our sort of American way of life has been exported around the world, but ultimately it goes around the world and then it comes back, and now we don't really have any further place to expand. But the question of what to do about capitalism is much, much larger and has engendered many, many debates.
What about specific political things like conservative ideology that's actually kind of propaganda that's put out there to serve the interests that are actually mostly behind things getting devastated? Is it possible to deconstruct that mindset in a way to see how it could be stretched into including ecology?
Yeah, I think so. Actually, some of the evangelical Christian traditions and some of the more conservative Christian traditions have been at the leadership of what creation care. So identifying biblical passages that support care for the environment. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, that would be one piece of it. But
yeah.
I'm thinking of also of the whole neocons and consumerism and all the things that are pumped into us by ads all the time, stuff that Brian Swan talks about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all pervasive, it's technologically powerful, it's incredibly sophisticatedly designed to promulgate, maintain the present disregard for anything but the profit.
That's true. I think the project there is to deconstruct capitalism, actually, and with the recognition that nothing can continue to grow forever, and if our economy can't continue to grow, then what are other ways that we can create and add value? And so I mentioned restoration ecology briefly, but some people are working on the idea that you can enhance value through quality of relationships, quality of interactions, longevity of goods rather than disposability of goods. So sort of flipping around some of the current paradigms of capitalism. That's a really big project. Yeah. But yeah, I'd say it's definitely, and again, that's where religious traditions are helpful. They mostly counsel against greed, And whether you look at Christianity as far as one of the 7 deadly sins, or you look at Buddhism that tells you to cultivate equanimity and cultivate contentment and acceptance of enough, belief of enough. Those are the first 2 that come to mind. I'm pretty sure that every other major religious tradition has a similar teaching. So I think that wherever we are, with whatever cultural background we're in, when we look to those religious resources, we can see they tell us that this is not the way to go. This is the wisdom of the ages that's been developed over millennia. And they said, no, you don't continually seek more and more and more. You try to be content where you are. Buddhism has a great image of the hungry ghost. This creature with a very long, thin neck and a big, distended belly, and the hunger ghost is always trying to eat more and more, but is never satisfied because it has this long neck and can only swallow a little bit. And it just makes me think of American culture today. But also then, so it suggests the problem. The solution, I think, is really complicated. I mean, we don't just disassemble capitalism overnight, global capitalism, but people are definitely working in that direction. Robert?
A couple of related comments, I think they're related. First, I'm just delighted to be hearing you talk about Aldo Leopold, because like so many people, I had not read it until, 2 years ago when we read it as a faculty study, five of us. It may have been your idea. I don't know.
I think, yeah. Good.
I mean, we're all, those of us who hadn't read it, just have this sort of a vivid experience of a great discovery.
Yeah, great.
And just by the way, when I was reading him, when I think back on reading him and what he said, I picture a bachelor in the woods alone, months at a time. And now that I think he's there with his wife and 5 children, I'm even more astonished. This little tiny chicken coop, writing with this just sublime meditative attention,
Yeah.
with everybody around. It's just really more impressive than I realized. Anyway, if you haven't read it, you owe yourself to read it and get the good edition, the larger edition with nice print. It's really a great treat. The other comment, which I think is related, is, you know, in this program we always talk about Thomas Berry as being one of the great, you know, prophets, founders, etc., etc. And we, at least I think, there's a tendency to think of him in relation to Teilhard. So it goes Teilhard, and then Thomas, and then Brian. But I've now just read the whole of Thomas Berry, and I think he's closer to Aldo Leopold than to anybody.
Yeah.
It's amazing how close he is in the rhetoric and the ethics and the just the attention to the bioregion. All these things. I thought, you know, when I first read Roderick Nash, I thought, oh, well, this is all new. But that also comes from Leopold. So, I mean, we've been, some of us who don't know this field have just not been really at the beginning without Leopold. The other interesting thing about Thomas, those of you who don't know about Thomas and hear his name a lot, which is possible, is that he also is clearly very influenced by Lynn White's essay. Because a lot of his almost tirade, certainly critique of Christianity, uses a lot of the same language. I'm not saying he settled there, but he didn't ever, you know, go against Christianity, at least explicitly, but within. But it's a family feud. I mean, he's really intensely scolding in a way that's quite similar to Lynn White's. Although, you know, we don't want to settle with Lynn White in all respects, it seems to me quite a powerful and quite positive in some respects of a wake-up call and a pay attention, and, you know, you're not as holy as you think, and look what you're doing.
Exactly.
And that comes right into Thomas's. It was not in Teilhard in anything like the same way. So I now am beginning to think that Thomas comes from Aldo Leopold.
Interesting.
And Lynn White, as much as he comes from Teilhard.
Interesting. So now we have another guru, or another stream. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're really in good shape with Aldo Leopold. I mean, there's an integrity and a purity that is, I think, quite unmistakable.
Yeah.
I'd be very surprised if I found he was sort of an abusive person. I mean, he's just such a splendid person coming through those words.
I think he was pretty authoritarian. From my readings, yeah. But but beyond that, I think a good guy. At least 2 of his sons were professors at UC Berkeley for many, many years. Yeah. So he raised them well.
Yeah, he made them do the homework.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Good to hear about the connection from Leopold to Berry. That's really interesting.
Oh, it's very clear. I mean, I see it anyway. I'm sure I'm not dreaming.
Yeah. That's really cool.